to read. Hello, ASMR Nation. So I've got 4 horror books that I implore you to read. All of these books, these horror books do not ask for you to suspend your belief. They're not monster horror or paranormal horror, or virus horror or zombie horror. I do love a good zombie horror. But all of these are horror in the feels. Emotional horror. Yes, emotional horror. Is that a genre? They will torment you emotionally. So if that's your jam, or if you're interested, obviously horror has a million trigger warnings, right? And so this video, as I'm talking about them, trigger warnings, right? I don't know if I'm putting this on Patreon or regular channel. I know I haven't talked about books on regular channel for a while, so it might go up there. So just in case, you know the drill. You know the deal. Gotta do some channel maintenance, some channel hygiene. So if you're new here, welcome to my nonsense. If you're old here, welcome back. Oh, jeez. If you're new here, please consider hitting subscribe. And if you're old here, go double check. Make sure you're subscribed. Hit the like if you like. Leave a comment. It could be anything related to the video. It could just be hello, a few emojis, whatever. As long as it's cool and respectful. Hit the notification bell. As always, I will link my tip jars down yonder in the description box. No pressure whatsoever. But every $1 or $2 helps. That's what allows me to continue to make content. Also, you are invited to my Patreon, unless you're already over here, unless this is on Patreon. The link will be down in the description box. Okay, so Of Foster Homes and Flies is by Chad Lutzke. The first 2 books I'm going to talk about are by Chad Lutzke. I think that's how you say it. Lutzke. Lutzke. And it has a 4.32 rating. Nobody really knows about this book because there's only 1,000 ratings on here. So, more people need to read it. And it doesn't really give the description here, so I will kind of give it to you. It says, a neglected 12-year-old boy does nothing to report the death of his mother in order to compete in a spelling bee. It's a tragic coming-of-age tale of horror and drama in the setting of a hot New Orleans summer. It is about a little boy, 12 years old, named Denny, I think. And here we go. Somebody did this for me. Denny is looking forward to the spelling bee at school in 1 week. The problem is his mother died, and her body is rotting in the home. So, without spoiling too much, I will tell you that his mom's a piece of shit. Okay, the year before, Denny wanted to compete in the spelling bee because he's good at spelling. When he didn't, and it was his biggest regret. He's 12. That's a huge regret at 12. It's his life regret at this point. So this year he swore nothing was going to stop him from competing in this spelling bee. Denny has an alcoholic mom and no dad. His dad either ran off or passed away. And his alcoholic mom just sits in the chair in the living room. She doesn't get up. I don't even think she feeds him or anything. She just doesn't. She drinks in her chair and that's it. So she's either awake, drinking in her chair, being awful, or she's passed out in the chair. She has a little dog too. He does like the dog. He likes the dog. You know, at 12, you're just starting to see who your parents are, even though you live with them for 12 years. If you have a shitty parent, you're kind of just your eyes are opening a little bit. So I think he's just barely getting to that. And the mom isn't immobile or anything because she has friends. She plays cards with friends and stuff, and she'll get up and get herself ready for that, but that's it. Well, this spelling bee is approaching, and he's getting excited, and then one day he comes down the stairs, and mom is not waking up. And so he has to make some decisions, but if I call right now, I won't be able to compete in my spelling bee. So it's kind of about the week of his mom being dead in the house and him trying to evade any kind of authorities or so that he can achieve this goal of getting in and winning the spelling bee. So it takes you on this week-long journey of the things he's doing to cover up his mom's passing. And it is so, it will rip your heart out and serve it to you, because you just want to go rescue this boy. Okay, so that was that one by Chad Lutsky, and then the other one is Wallflower. Chad Lutsky. It's Wallflower. One word. Wallflower. This one, I think it has more of a description. It does. Okay. This one's rated 4.22. Even less ratings. There's only 450 ratings for this book, so even less people have read this book. Let's get those numbers up. After an encounter with a homeless man, a high school graduate becomes obsessed with the idea of doing H, challenging himself to try it just once. Like, this is real horror, guys. Because those thoughts of just one time, a bleak tale of addiction, delusion, and flowers. Bleak as hell and honestly horrific. Oh, now there's a bunch of reviews again. Let's see if somebody wrapped it up better than I can. Essentially, okay, group of kids, 18-year-olds, 17-year-olds, whatever. There's like, I think they're out in Texas. There's this housing development that was going up, but something happened to the economy, and so they just halted the housing development. So these were like really nice houses that were going up, and they're just like they're like standing, but they're like not, the interior is not done or anything yet. So as you know, 17-year-olds or 18-year-olds do, they go do stuff they're not supposed to do. They go into these houses. Well, obviously this would also be a good spot for squatters and stuff, right? So this group of boys, including the main character, I don't know what his name is, and these are short. These two are short. You can read them in a day or two. Whatever the main character's name is, he and his friends go into one of these empty houses, and they're like gonna drink and stuff or whatever, which can be just as bad. If you take it, you can take anything. You can take any addiction all the way down. But pretty normal behavior. These kids are gonna break in and drink. But when they break in and drink, and they're going through the house, and they go upstairs, and they run into a squatter, and he's laying there, or he's like getting up, and he's got all his like H supplies, you know, the drug I'm talking about, right by him. And like, I think they fight a little bit, like there's a scuffle, and he runs out, and I think the boys continue to drink, or they just leave, I don't know. But the main character, he gets home, and he's like, man, he's like, I want to go see that guy, like I want to go do H with him. And like, he gets this thought in his head, like, I really want to go. He's just, something not right happened in his head that night. And so he goes back to that house like the next day or within the next few days, and like begs this dude. He's like, I'm so sorry that we like interrupted your activities, and I'm just begging for you to let me do drugs with you. And the guy's like, no. But he's not really there either, so eventually he breaks down and starts to come around to the idea that this kid just wants to try it one time. And he does. And like the first time he tries it, it seems like it's gonna be okay, because he's like, oh, that wasn't all that. Like, I'm okay now. I did it. He gets the itch again. So he starts going back to this house regularly. And I'll leave it with that, because then it's like the inevitable demise of his life. His whole, like, this kid was planning on going to college, and so that one is again called Wallflower by Chad Lutsky. And then we have The Girl Next Door by Jack Ketchum. And when I tell you that I had to make my mom read this book with me, and she wasn't happy about it either. It's really good. It's that good. It's that good that you're like, I can't do this by myself. 3.94 ratings out of 40,000. So the next two books will have a lot of ratings. They're pretty popular, but and I think this is turned into 2 movies. And I made my husband watch the one of the movies with me. I think it's turned into 2 movies. And he hated it. Like, he was like, why are you watching this? I was like, I don't care. I know you don't like it, but you have to watch it with me because I read the book, I have to watch the movie, and you just have to be there for me. It's that bad. Like, it's that good. Because you almost feel like you're guilty for not stopping this stuff from happening. So you just, like, keep reading it. You're like, okay, suburbia, shady tree-lined streets, well-tended lawns, and cozy homes. A nice, quiet place to grow up unless you're teenage Meg or her crippled sister Susan. On a dead-end street in a dark, damp basement of the Chandler house, Meg and Susan are left captive to the savage whims and rages of a distant aunt who is rapidly descending into madness. It is a madness that infects all 3 of her sons and finally the entire neighborhood. Only one troubled boy stands hesitantly between Meg and Susan and their cruel, torturous deaths. A boy with a very adult decision to make. So Meg and her sister, who is younger and crippled, their parents pass away and they get sent to go live with an aunt who they're like, well, she's got kids, like she should know what she's doing. And I think the aunt is like an alcoholic too. But they get there and she's just really weird. Like right from the beginning, she's kind of off. And this book takes place, like, I think, well, it was published in the 80s, but I think it takes place even before that, maybe like the 60s or 70s. I don't know. But the girls do like run around with all the neighborhood kids, and it's mostly boys. The girls that live in the neighborhood are kind of like stuck up. That's like an age thing, that they're at this like weird preteeny age, and so the girls are less accepting, so they just run around with the boys. But the aunt has some kind of like weird jealousy thing on the older one, and it starts to like really show, and the book just gets crazier and crazier, and the aunt starts to turn, like, she does weird stuff, and then she starts to turn the boys, basically like asking them to torture the older one and be mean to the little one, and it gets darker and darker and darker. Tons of trigger warnings. It's so hard to get through this. And then we have one more. Now this one is slower, and it's a Stephen King, and I know I'm not a Stephen King fan. I get that his work is good and that people enjoy it, and I'm happy for people that enjoy his horror. It just is not me. Like, I like it, but I would never read it. I might read Pet Sematary, but and it is Dolores. I've read this more than once. Dolores Claiborne by Stephen. You know how weird this is, Dolores Claiborne by Stephen King. My mom just had this book laying around, and sometimes you find like your best books. I was like maybe in junior high when I found it. Sometimes you find the best books by books that are just laying around. You're like, what's this? And then, whoa. 3.92 rating out of 150,000. Suspected of killing Vera Donovan, her wealthy employer, Dolores Claiborne tells the story of her life, harkening back to her. So it's like a police interview, but she just cracks open during the interview and tells the whole story of her life. Harkening back to her disintegrating marriage and the suspicious death of her violent husband. So then there's another, like, well, now we're looking at 2 deaths, you know. Joe St. George 30 years earlier. Dolores also tells of Vera's physical and mental decline, of her loyalty to an employer who has become emotionally demanding, so like an abusive boss. Ends up dead. because Dolores is like the caretaker for her. And let's just read this review. An extremely unconventional king novel, a kind of art experiment, letting a protagonist tell her story without caring about normal writing traditions. A cop tries to find out what's going on, and the only dynamic in this kind of crime thriller is that her introspections and thoughts are contrasted with a bit of investigative action and the usual mental illness and madness subjects. No, that's not a good one, because that's just talking about... Wow, this book is pretty unique. It's in the form of a monologue given by Dolores herself, detailing the events leading up to her husband's death a number of years previously, as well as more recent death of her employer, Vera Donovan. There's no chapters, no breaks, nothing, just a continuous narration from our protagonist. It blows me away how, not for 1 second did I feel like I was reading King's writing. I felt like I was reading Dolores' confession. King's ability to perfectly encapsulate and get into the head of middle-aged woman astounds me. She has such a strong, believable voice. Dolores made me laugh out loud, honestly, those stories about Vera's bowel movements, and made me tear up, and I was cheering on her every step of the way. She's a kick-ass character, a strong female, and one of King's best. She perfectly demonstrates the strength of a mother's love, even though it may raise many questions about morality and how far we should go to protect those we love. It took me a little longer to warm up to Vera, but I ended up loving her as well. It's just so awesome to read about two females who, even though they may have had some issues, had each other's backs. Dolores Claiborne may have given me a new favorite King character for the list, but it has also given me a most hated character too, her damn husband Joe. The way he treats Dolores, it's hard. It's hard to read, and it reminds me of like some relationships that I saw as a child, so it was really triggering, I guess. And I was a child when I read it. I was in like junior high. Her damn husband Joe, the way he treats Dolores, the things he says to her, as well as how he treated other characters, careful of spoilers, made me want to beat the crap out of him. I hate him. Even though this book has a few funny moments and hilarious quotes from Dolores, it does deal with some dark themes such as domestic violence, alcoholism, abuse. It's not a horror book either. It is and it isn't. Like, it's an emotionally horrifying. Although certain parts left me a bit on edge, which I can't go without spoiling. Although I liked the unique narration of this book, I personally was not a fan of the lack of chapters or section breaks. Yeah, I remember it being like that. So if you like a lot of chapters, this isn't it. But I guess that's personal preference. I've had a few people on Instagram say that they prefer that as it actually helped them speed through the book. It just wasn't for me. This book is also a movie. The movie was okay. The movie did a pretty good job, I would say. Is it Kathy Bates? It might be Kathy Bates. I don't know. I can't remember. It's been a long, long time. So anyways, those are 4 horror books that, if you can handle it and you feel like torturing yourself, go for it. If you do, let me know. If you've read any of these, let me know. If you plan on reading them, let me know. If you've read anything like that like ripped your heart out, that's kind of in this genre of not paranormal, not monsters. And I've read other ones by like almost all these authors, and none of them did it the way that these books did. So anyways, if you watch this all the way to the end, thank you very much. I hope you have a good rest of your day, evening, good night's sleep, and I will see y'all really soon.